Hello everyone, this is Kelly and I'd like to welcome you back to the Honeybee Stamps YouTube channel and day two's products of our vintage holiday release, available at honeybeestamps.com on October the 14th. First today I have the newest edition of our Inside Sentiments. This is the holiday edition, which includes Season's Greetings, Happy Holidays, Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Oh Come Let Us Adore Him, and then lots of sub-sentiments and greetings that are perfect to fit on the outside of your card with those larger sentiments or on the inside of your cards. There's also a coordinating die set that goes along with the inside holiday sentiments. These dies are going to cut out all of the larger sentiments in this stamp set, like Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and so on. Now here's a card that I've made using that Inside Sentiment Holiday Edition. I used the Merry Christmas stamp here, stamped it on some black cardstock with embossing ink, and used white embossing powder. I used the coordinating die to cut that out and added that right over the top of my pine tree die cut. Now I have another addition to our buzzword stamps and dies, and this is Noel. So we have the Noel scripty word and then mix and match greetings like the first, Noel, joy, Noel, O holy night, born is the King of Israel, and rejoice. Now there's a three-piece coordinating die set that's going to cut out the scripty word Noel, a basic shadow, and then a larger shadow that has a pierced design around the edge. Here is a card that Ricky has used that three-piece die set. You can see all three layers stacked together there. He's paired that beautiful die cut sentiment with some pattern paper and our beautiful, lovely layers anemone. Next is a cute little trio of products. The first is a die set called Mugs and Kisses. This has two cute little mugs, either for tea, hot cocoa, or coffee. There's little things to decorate your mugs like a snowflake, a heart. There's even a little tea bag label. There's a die cut so you can add in the coffee or tea or cocoa. There's a cute little spoon, a snowflake, and a heart to decorate your mug. Now the stamp set that pairs along with the Mugs and Kisses die set is called a Hug and a Mug. You can see the great sentiments here like I love you more than hot chocolate or I love you more than coffee. Sending you a cup of cheer. So there's lots of great little greetings in this. It also has a stamp, so you can stamp the solid bit of coffee or cocoa. Now the other three stamps there towards the bottom are so you can add on your own little bit of coffee art, whether you want to stamp that or you want to heat emboss that in white over your coffee, but those are there to decorate and make the cutest little cup of tea or coffee. There's also a coordinating die set that goes with these stamps, and it even cuts out the coffee art, so you can add that in cardstock. So here's a look at the card that I have made using the Mugs and Kisses dies along with the Hug and a Mug stamps and dies. You can see that cute little mug of cocoa there with whipped cream, marshmallows, a layered candy cane, the little spoon, and of course Mugs and Kisses. The newest edition of our lovely layers collection is the Anemone. Now this floral die set makes a large blossom and a small bud. So to make the large blossom, it has three large dies that layer together. They have great embossing detail. I'll hold these up so you can see them here. There are little leaves. There's the center of the flowers, and then it has the cutest little bud that can go along with your larger anemone. So here's a card that I made during one of our little sneak peek live streams. I've added two of this full die set onto the front of my card. You can see the beautiful detail there in all of the petals, the leaves, and the little bud. Now the next stamp and coordinating die set I'm really excited about. It's called Post Perfect. It creates the most beautiful postcards. So you can see the really beautiful script and decorated postcard there in the center. And then there's stamps that say for correspondence, for addresses only. There are little decorations to decorate the sides and ends of your postcard. There's a little stamp there at the top or a place to put a stamp. And then there's a coordinating die set. So if you wanted to add those die cuts onto your creations, that would be perfect. Now these are great to create a for real postcard that you could send in the mail. Just place all of those stamps on one side of your postcard and then a beautiful floral image on the other. Or you could use these, like I'm going to at the end of this video, to create kind of a background for your other cards with other images. Here's just a look at how beautiful those stamps are all put together. Now, speaking of mail, this next beautiful stamp set is called Merry Mail. It has the cutest little mailbox, the lid that you can open and close with your coordinating dies. So there's the outside and the inside of the little lid to your mailbox. There's the flag. There's all types of little holiday decorations like lights. There's little packages that can spill out of your mailbox. Two cute little birds, lots of greenery, and lots of little gifts, and even falling snow. Now the coordinating die set will cut out everything that you see in that stamp set. So lots of fun if you want to layer those images together. You can cut and use your die cuts to stack those gifts right into the mailbox or all around the post that holds up your mailbox. And I'm going to create a card today using this Merry Mail stamp set along with the pretty postage stamp and coordinating die set. So here's a look again. You can see that that stamp set has already gotten some love. That is the Post Perfect, and there is the coordinating dies. And here is that beautiful Merry Mail with the cute little mailbox and gifts and all the things. I love all of that, along with its coordinating dies. I'm also going to use the postage stamp looking dies. This is an older die set, but I wanted to pull the whole postage theme here into my card. Now I am stepping out of my box today. I'm going to create kind of a grungy, vintage looking card using these products. I'm pairing that with some craft cardstock along with some of the pattern papers from our vintage holiday 6x6" paper pad. So I've got all my supplies here ready to go and I'm ready to get stamping. So first I'm going to create kind of a beautiful background for my mailbox to set on top of. And this is where I'm going to use that Post Perfect stamp set. So the first thing I'm going to do is use that beautiful postcard stamp and I'm going to set it up in my MISTI on top of that kind of postage edge die cut craft paper. And I'm going to heat emboss that with gold embossing powder. Now, while I'm thinking about how I want to set up my card, I need to make sure that I have room towards the top right-hand corner to add my cute little stamp. So I'm just going to kind of nestle my stamps together, make sure that I have room. And then I'm going to take away that little 3-cent stamp image and only stamp the postcard, the beautiful scripty postcard words there. So once I get my MISTI door closed, I'm just holding that up and kind of eyeballing it to make sure everything is nice and straight. And then I want to treat that whole piece of craft cardstock with anti-static powder. So I'm just going to go all the way over that piece of cardstock and then ink up my postcard stamp with the Versamark watermark ink. I'm going to get that stamp nice and juicy and stamp that down. And I'm going to do this a couple of times just to make sure all those swirls and little curly cues are all inked up and ready to take my gold embossing powder. So I'm going to use Brutus Monroe Gilded Gold Embossing Powder, and I'm going to sprinkle that right over the top. And then I'm going to heat up my heat tool and set that embossing powder. So I'm going to tap it off, and you can already see how gorgeous that beautiful stamped image is going to be. I'm going to get my heat tool all nice and hot and then heat this until it's nice and glimmery and shimmery, and it is just beautiful when it's all heat set. Okay, now once my embossing powder has all been heat set and it has cooled off, I want to make sure it's all nicely cooled off before I handle that cardstock. I am going to stamp the other portions of my little postcard scene that I have going on here. So I have the little divider piece, so it looks like a little bar with some little curly cues around the top, and that just separates where you write on the postcard and then where you add your address. And then there's a stamp that says for correspondence, and then one that reads address only. So I have those set up in my MISTI, and I am using a really deep red ink. So it's going to give it that pop of holiday color there. You can see I have one of the little curly cues there in the corner as well. That's going to add a nice little pop of red. And I end up inking these up and stamping them several times to get a really deep, rich cherry red color. So I got the last little corner piece stamped there in red, and then I'm ready to move on to my next stamped images. Next, I'm taking a creamy, like light linen paper. It's lighter than the craft cardstock. I wanted it to look a little different, so it looks like a real stamp being placed onto the postcard. But I'm stamping that 3-cent stamp that's very beautiful with that same red ink and stamping it several times again, so I get that really rich cherry red deep color. Now I'm going to use the coordinating die to cut out my stamp, but you'll notice there that I have stamped one of the wax seal images, and I poured clear embossing powder over that cherry red ink while it was still wet. And I did that in several layers to make it look nice and thick and glossy, just like a wax seal. So there is a coordinating die that goes along with the stamp and the wax seal. You can see both of those there. And I end up on this card not using the seal, but I wanted to leave it in here just to show you how beautiful that is. You could place that on your envelopes, on the flap of your envelope. You can place it on a card. So there's a couple of different of those wax seal images in that stamp set, and they're both beautiful. So I'm adding my die cut stamp here up into the corner, and then I'm ready to distress this whole little panel that I have here. So I'm taking Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and one of my Honeybee Stamps blending brushes, and I'm gently rubbing on that ink to all the edges, and you can see how instantly that gives it an old age distressed look. Okay, now I'm ready to start working with the Merry Mail stamp set. This is so cute. So I am creating kind of a vintage style card, but I think this would be really cute as a more modern card with bright, fun colors. And I am stamping this on craft cardstock because I want it to blend in and go with the whole vintage feel that I have going on with this card. So I'm laying out all of the stamps that I want to use for this scene, and then I'm going to stamp those in a brown ink. I think I use gathered twigs just so everything blends in. I'm going to stamp that down. And then when I color these, I'm going to color them with colored pencils. That just lends itself to the whole vintage feel. Once I have all the brown images stamped, the ones I'm going to color, I can stamp the pine sprigs in Pine Needles Distress Oxide ink. So there's no need to color those. You don't need to stamp those in brown. There's no coloring necessary. It's super easy with your Distress Oxide inks. Once I get that done, I'm ready to die cut all of those. But before I start building my card, I want to add the little cancel stamp to cancel my little pretend stamp up there in the corner. I want to add that on, and to get a kind of more rustic distressed look, I stamped it off once over there onto the left hand side on that paper. And so when I stamp it down onto my product or my project, it's going to look a little messy, a little old, like it didn't stamp perfectly, and that's exactly what I want. Now I have the little wavy postage lines there. Again, I'm going to ink those up with black soot ink. I'm going to stamp it off onto that scrap piece of paper and then line it up and stamp it again onto my project. And again, this is not stamped perfectly. That's exactly what I want it to look like. A little old, a little rustic. Okay, so now I have all of my die cuts ready to go. You can see I have everything colored in with colored pencil. Nothing's perfect. You can see the little mailbox there to the left. I left it kind of sun damage there on the top where it has weathered that black paint. You can see all of my little birds and images. And then again, I want everything to look distressed and kind of old. So again, I'm going to take that vintage photo ink and use my blending brushes and go right around the edges of my little pieces of greenery and berries, along with the extra little letters and postcards that I'm going to add in to my little Merry Mail scene. Next, I am taking that pattern paper from the vintage holiday paper pad, and I went to town with a nail file along the edges. And I have distressed it and roughed it up and ruffled it up. And next, again, I'm going to take that vintage photo ink, go right around the edges, and make that paper look old and worn. Next, I can take my liquid adhesive and I'm going to add that right onto the front of a 6 by 6 inch card base made out of craft cardstock. And I'm really running my fingers over that to make sure that my distressed vintage paper is going to stick right down to the front. And next I'm going to add some seam binding ribbon. Now this is dyed ribbon. You can find this on Etsy is where I got it, but I love it, especially for the holidays. And I just have a red ribbon here that I'm going to tie into a little bow. So I urge you to dig into that crafty stash and pull out your ribbons or your twines or anything like that. And I'm going to use my Honeybee Stamps reverse tweezers as an extra hand there to help hold my ribbon in place while I tie that little bow. Now, after I fuss with my little bow for a minute and get the tails trimmed off, I'm going to add my little post card that we stamped onto the front of my distressed note card there, and I'm going to kind of cock it to the side just a little bit. So I've got that all added down. You can see how beautiful that gold embossing powder is, and I love that you can leave that postcard right there as is and add a little sentiment and a greeting, and it would be awesome. I'm going to keep moving along with my Merry Mail images that I've die cut, and I am adding a product called Snowtex. Now, this is carried at honeybeestamps.com if you just search in the little search bar for Snowtex. But this is a textured, opaque, white, like a putty or a glaze, and it looks like snow on your project. So you can see that I've used a dry paintbrush there, and I'm just dripping it and adding it on to my images, such as my little mailbox there. And I'm going to add some foam tape to that. Kind of move my ribbon out of the way and get that nestled into place. Next, I take my little groupings of gifts there that I stamped and then use the colored pencils to shade in. And again, I'm adding that Snowtex product there to the top of the gifts. So it looks like the snow has just gathered there on top of all those little packages. And I'm going to nestle that little die cut right there in the mailbox. Now that is designed to look like those gifts are sticking out of the mailbox. So there's no masking, nothing necessary. So it all goes together and it looks like all those gifts and packages are just piling out of the mailbox. Now I've added my little cardinal couple there to the top of the mailbox. I think they're so cute and so adorable. And next I'm taking all that greenery and I'm just topping each little sprig with a little bit of the Snowtex and then added that in and around the bottom part of my mailbox. Again, I'm going to take a little sprig, add a little bit of our liquid glue, and then just kind of set it here and there to set the scene down there by my little post box. I can even take that little Snowtex and my brush and kind of go around the edges, down around the bottom of the mailbox where it looks like there would be gathered snow. I add a little bit to those extra little postcards and little bits of mail that are spilling out onto the lid of the mailbox and to the ground. Okay, now, once I get my little postcard glued down, I think I'm all ready to go with my greetings here. So I'm going to use the Inside Holiday Sentiment set, and I'm going to stamp the season's greetings. I thought that was perfect for the outside of my card. Now, it is a long stamp, so I'm going to do a little bit of stamp surgery and trim those words apart. I can always stick them back together later. They'll nestle right back together. But I needed these stamped to be one on top of the other. I'm going to nestle that right there into the little portion of my postcard. And again, I'm going to stamp that down with the really deep red cherry ink. Now, I really wanted to use my Misty because you know when we get this far in a really detailed project, you do not want to mess up the sentiment. So you can really see me thinking about it here. But my card had so much dimension, I decided to take the risk and use a stamping block. Again, I use that really deep red ink, and I'm really careful and press that into the cardstock and hold it just for a second, and then it turns out perfect. And so now I have Season's Greetings on the outside of my card. And then I'm going to add one of those little sub-sentiments on the inside of my card. And this time I can use my Misty. I can flip open my card base. I can get the base nestled down into the corner of my Misty. And then I can place that inside sentiment wherever I want it to go. So the sentiment reads, "May your heart be filled with all the happiness of the season." I can pick that up with the lid of my Misty. Make sure it's all nice and straight. And then again, I'm going to use that deep red ink to ink out my stamp and close the door. And now I can stamp that a couple of times using my Misty. What did we ever do without our Misty tools? I stamped that a few times to get it really nice and rich and red. And then the card is ready to come out of the Misty. Okay, you guys, phew, that was a doozy. You guys need a gold star if you hung out with me till the end of this video. So I had so much fun stepping outside of my creative box today and creating something that's vintage and kind of rustic and distressed. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was so much fun to make this Merry Mail card. I hope you'll come back tomorrow for day 3 of products, and make sure you check out all of the inspiration on all of our social media sites. Join us on October the 14th for our release party, and I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Thank you, and bye-bye.